happen because of a reality show. I mean, I don't think people go to restaurants now because of a show like MasterChef. Do you have MasterChef in the States?
Yes, yeah.
Yes. So a show like MasterChef, I don't think people go to a restaurant and they sit there and they taste the food and they're like, oh my goodness, they must have used a balsamic reduction on this one. I saw this on MasterChef. You know, people just don't approach like eating out at a restaurant that way. So when they
Yeah.
go see drag shows and they're like, oh my God, you look like blah, 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 or this is like blah, blah, blah. It's really weird and it makes me feel like, I don't know, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's eroded the culture. I think it's just audiences have bought into this endless cycle of drag
Hmm.
queens thinking that they have to impress audiences to be successful, and then audiences expecting that kind of like
Yeah.
behavior, and we're caught in this loop where it's like people aren't doing drag for themselves anymore.
Yeah, I
They're
think we've
doing drag to meet
gotten
expectations.
and I think we've gotten in, yeah, like you said, a self-contained loop where it's like those people are going to keep showing up to see those gals, and those gals are going to keep showing up to impress those people. And I think like a lot of yeah, a lot of the issues that we see are like are is a scarcity of opportunities for people who do not want to operate inside of that circle. It's like I want to show up to my Hamburger Mary's on a Saturday morning and turn out whatever I've got, but I do not meet that expectation that sets completely aside from the set of references that I have. Yeah, I completely understand. And it's comforting to hear that it's happening in other countries and it's kind of like a global phenomenon, but also it's there must be something to be done about it. Although I guess there are people within the drag culture that would say there isn't much to be done about it. And I guess like it's an evolution of where we're
Well, I mean,
getting.
I'm a booker. I fill maybe 30, 35 different entertainment slots a week with drag
Hmm.
queens. I employ like maybe close to a roster of 100 rotating drag queens.
Jesus,
So
I got like
I'm
seriously goals. Just saying.
Oh well,
Yeah.
it's the best thing about my job, and it's the best thing about my drag career is being able to provide this platform. And I'm very,
Yes.
very selective and very, very picky about who I employ,
Right.
and who I book. Not just because I want quality performers, but I also understand that people look to see, especially because I'm quite young and I'm booking a lot of people. Um, a lot of older people that run clubs, they look at the people that I'm booking as a kind of like a feeder for fresh talent, and they go,
Right.
"Oh, who did Etcetera book last week? Were they any good? We can book them the week afterwards." And
Well,
I
it's a
see it happening.
position of power,
Mm.
and one that you are wielding quite gracefully. It seems.
Well, it's more so that I'm more willing to book. I have my eyes on talent. I don't have my eyes on um, you know tiers of hierarchy in the drag scene. I'm not exclusionary like some clubs are. Like, and I predominantly prioritize trans, POC, Indigenous, AFAB talent in what I book because I know that they don't get booked in other clubs here in Sydney as
Denver
regularly
producers,
before.
are you listening? Denver producers, the call is
Producers
out.
everywhere, producers
Yeah.
everywhere. And so
Seriously.
when I book these people, sometimes they come to me afterwards and they say, "Thank you so much. This was the first paid gig I've ever got, or
Right.
this is the first gig where I felt comfortable, or blah blah blah." And I'm like, "You shouldn't be thanking me. That should be a given. You've been
Right.
working with me for a few years, and you're producing work of this caliber." And there are lazy white cis men on stage doing this and that, throwing their bodies around in unsteamed out wigs that they bought for $30.
I want
And
I want to cry. Thank you. Like I'm
no,
literally
but this is what I say all the time, and I say it on the mic as well. And when I'm hosting, I say I just want I say to audiences, I say these are women doing drag, these are people of color doing drag, these are trans people doing drag, and if you enjoyed what you saw, you need to talk to the people that run clubs. You need to talk to your friends.
Yes.
You need to support these artists because at the end of the day, I can book people, and I don't see it as like I'm not like a savior, and I don't have a savior complex about it. I'm like, these are the performers I enjoy to see.
And you're
These
going
are
to
the
take
performers I want to book.
you're going to take the position that you have been given and use it correctly. And you would think that that's like that's the minimum that somebody could do. I'm like I feel I'm emotional hearing you say that. Literally just because like no seriously
Yeah.
because like we
No, well, no one else is doing it, and no one else,
yeah.
no people aren't talking about it enough. And I know this because when I started on the scene, and I was like, I'm a non-binary trans drag performer, people were like, that's confusing. and
That's
our
too
audience
many
know
adjectives for us. I'm sorry.
yeah, why are you labeling yourself? Just like be free, get up and do a performance. And I mean, I just I feel very strongly about this, but also people often come to me and they say, how do you get such diverse lineups? How do you book so diversely? And I say, I look around and I see talented people and I book them.
Well,
The
it's like
fact that
open your eyes, gal. Like
exactly. The
they're
fact that you're
right
not booking
there.
diversely means that you have some barriers or blinkers up in the way that you're booking, and it's probably subconscious or it's conscious, but you might not know that you are excluding huge portions of the drag community because they don't look like you or sound like you
Yes.
or act like you. And that, for me, is a big problem. We have a lot of parties here in Australia that are run by white gay muscle men for white gay muscle men, and they love to
We have
book other yeah.
we have whole bars. We have bars, clubs. We have blocks of our streets that are that. Yeah.
And me and my friends have put some quite public pressure on some of these parties, which has led to like, oh my god, me and my friends have received death threats, bullying, like
oh baby,
in the community, and we have continued, and very very slowly, some of these clubs are starting to program performers here and here and here, and yes, they are booking them as tokens, and yes, they are doing it to appease me and my friends who continue to post about them and continue.
But
to
how
talk
else
about
is it going to happen? Yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, there's small steps, and when I see, you know, a performer of color being booked for a gig that has been 100 white queens have been booked before for, I'm like, well, this is one step towards that audience being more comfortable with it, which shouldn't have to happen. But like, someone needs to make that first step, and so many promoters are so scared of doing that because they're scared of losing money. But they don't realize by diversifying your performer lineup, you diversify your audience, and you make more money.
Oh my god! Everybody, please sign up for Etcetera's school on drag economics. Like this is immense to me, and it's really like lining up because this year in particular has been. It's been a roller coaster for Denver drag, and for me personally, like as far as drag goes, because like at the beginning of the year, I made the resolution for drag and my creative work to be my job. I'm like, this is going to be my full time. I'm registering myself as a business. I am doing all the things that I need to do. I was like happy enough with my wig skills to like make that part of like the hustle and everything, and then the first couple of months, it's like I was producing a couple of shows and things were moving along and it was lovely. Then quarantine hits and of course everything shuts down. And everybody just kind of gets put on pause. But then it got to be around May time and everybody was kind of getting worried just because like there wasn't a lot of communication about like how the bars were going to reopen, what things were going to be like. And a lot of us were like, and then Black Lives Matter came along, and of course everybody took to the streets, and I spent weeks at a time doing that. But it also got our queer scene in a very like energized spot where we were very much talking about the roles of people of color in the drag scene, and it just brought up all of these issues to the very very top. And so me and a few drag friends were like, there are issues that are being highlighted by this movement and by quarantine and by all of this that we've been complaining about like for years now. And that's the diversity in cast. The payment is everything you've just talked about, which is why like I'm freaking out. And we basically were like, Denver itself is in a position where they're, and it's getting a little bit better, but there is definitely an oligarchy of drag performers. There is a very small set of, granted, very talented, but very, very powerful drag performers that really, they affect the wielding power on a scale that's a little ridiculous. Across our total of maybe 10 queer spaces, we have about 5 people making most of the decisions as far as that goes, and they're not always the brightest. I will go on the record with that. And they're definitely not the most diverse. And so we got to a point where it's like, okay, let's take all of this like affirmative action and all of this energy and funnel it into something like concrete and actionable. So we attempted to establish a drag bill of rights, because we kind of traced back that like a lot of this, like a lot of this manipulation and a lot of the poor treatment of drag performers kind of comes from the fact that like we're an unprotected working class. Like none of the at the moment, not a huge amount of our work is legit unless you rise to those levels of those producers. And we outlined stuff in this drag of bill that was, or drag of rights bill that was pretty basic of just like, be diverse, be reasonably diverse, because you guys number wise are not doing that. It's like establish like disability things, make sure that there's like a reasonable end to tip spot. Like we were able to crowdsource a huge amount of information and identify all the problems that like you were talking about just now as far as racial issues, and as far as the fact that like we have all of these bars that book the same queens and kings occasionally, if on a good day, over and over again, to very little artistic or progressive result. And it straight up, like I received multiple death threats because of it. Like we opened up a Google form that was like, hey, this is a super loose document and we would love to take even more input on it and make it as like representative as we can. I received so many comments in that feedback form that were like, why are you being so fucking mean-spirited? Why are you doing this and that? There's no need for change. I don't understand what needs to change in the community. And I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the problem. It's like me as a non-binary person of color is simply identifying to you issues that me and a network of people have seen, and you are coming back with violent energy even. And so it's like, think about all the people in between that simply just hate our guts for wanting to revolutionize in this way. It's deeply upsetting, and it eventually got to a point where like it people just let it go. Like the people in power in Denver drag, I will say it on public record, like they decided that that the issues of racism and everything were not important enough to make any actual genuine structural change going forward. And so we are now in quarantine with an even added layer of like, a lot of our productions are unsafe and unsanitary and unhealthy as far as quarantine goes. Like we are stuck with productions still full of those same exact queens, getting even worse because a lot of people are staying home for a lot of reasonable reasons. Nothing has really come of it. So to hear that you are like making actionable change is ultimately super inspiring. Like I want to be able to carry that over, and I don't even know if Denver's the city for it anymore. I find myself again wanting to funnel into LA, New York, Chicago, and enter in a community that's at least a couple steps ahead as far as those things go.
Yeah, I definitely, I think it's amazing that you took that initiative, and I've done similar things and received similar, feedback from community. I think it's really interesting because people will always have a perspective on why you're doing these things. And when I was first starting out in drag and I was saying these things a lot, people were saying, oh, you're just bitter that you're not being booked because you're not as talented and you're trying to say that. And then I was one of the most booked queens in the city, and they couldn't say that anymore. So now they just have to say, oh, well, you're just you're just a bully.
Yeah, well, like, that's the comment that I got a lot.
By my behavior, if you feel bullied by my behavior as a young gender non-conforming person in a scene full of old white men who have all of the structural power and advantage, then you need to reevaluate why you feel threatened by me.
If me raising my voice is like putting your defenses up in a room where I am surrounded by leather daddies that are ready to kill me, like you need to take care of that. And yeah, I just don't understand. I hated getting the critique of like, why don't you just stop being mean-spirited? And I'm like, it's mean-spirited to be racist booking a show. Like that's what was totally perplexing about it for me. So I feel seen.
It's so bizarre. No, but I see you, and I also see all of the other people in other cities around the world doing similar things, and there's people in Sydney as well who I work beside, and there's a lot of incredible artists here, trans artists and POC artists who do just as much, if not more work than me, to do these things, and we all work together collaboratively, and I'm so grateful to have this community around me. But at the end of the day, it comes back to one person can never push the whole thing forward. It is a community action.
It takes support.
it's about getting the average person, the person who isn't an activist, and the person who isn't angry and wants to kill you, but it's the person in the middle to start thinking a little bit more like you.
Absolutely.
They make up the majority of the scene. They make up the majority of patrons. And like I have a night here on Thursdays. It was called Mystery Box. It was like a drag game show.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started, I was having predominantly women and people of color perform as my special guests. And the audiences at the start were